Hey, what's up, everybody? Pat here, great for recovering alcoholic and addict, just like every day. Guys, please don't forget to subscribe, leave the video a like, and drop me a comment, and by all means, share it with somebody who might get something out of it. Other than that, we're going to get into it today, guys. We're going to go right back to the Just for Today NA meditation, which is titled Higher Powered. Higher Powered. Daily practice of our recovery program enables us to change from what we were to people guided by a higher power. Who we have been and who have we been and who have we become? There are a couple ways to answer this question. One is very simple. We came as addicts, our addiction killing us. In recovery, we've been freed from our obsession with drugs and our compulsion use, and our lives have been changed. But that's only the tip of the iceberg. Who have we been? In the past, we were people without power or direction. We felt like we had no purpose, no reason for living. Our lives didn't make any more sense to us than they did to our families, friends, or neighbors. Who are we really becoming? Today, we are not merely clean addicts, but people with a sense of direction, a purpose, and a power greater than ourselves. Through daily practice of spiritual principles, we've begun to understand how our addiction warped our feelings, motivations, and behavior. Gradually, the destructive force of our disease has been replaced by the life-giving force of our higher power. Recovery means more than cleaning up. It means powering up. We have done more than shed some bad habits. We are becoming new people guided by our higher power. Boy, I'm having a hard time saying that today. And then the affirmation is just for today. The guidance I need to become is ready at hand. Today, I will draw further away from my old lack of direction and closer to my higher power. Guys, I love these readings. There's a reason I do them every day. They so encase and incorporate everything that I'm going through in the most beautiful ways, right? I truly consider myself one of the lucky survivors of addiction. And again, that is only a daily reprieve. I get a daily reprieve every day that I choose not to pick up. And as much as I am stringing together a number of 24 hours, a couple more days, I will have 8 months of continuous sobriety. By far the longest I've had in 40 years, outside of an institution, of course. But more than that, guys, my recovery has never looked like this. I'm actually becoming a productive member of society. I'm being welcomed into situations that I never dreamed I would ever get. Because prior to changing the person that I was, I had always just tried to shed the drugs, but I was still just making terrible, terrible decisions on a daily basis, and then I was so miserable that I would immediately just go right back to needing to medicate myself. Fortunately, this time around, and like I said, I found out yesterday that it's basically been, I realized yesterday from the date that I basically started the journey into trying to get into recovery a year ago, September of last year, is when I'd finally said, all right, you know what, I can't do this anymore. I have to make a change. I wasn't ready and willing to throw in the towel yet. I wasn't ready and willing to surrender, but I'd started to pray and I started to ask for help. It took me until just after Thanksgiving, and then early December I got into rehab, and that's when my journey's really begun. But the very beginning of it was a year ago, and it's amazing to me. This has been by far the best year of my life, even having a few months where I was still absolutely miserable. But it was laying the groundwork to get into recovery. Because guys, as any of you know, that any of you that dealt with addiction knows, it's not always easy. Particularly, no matter how bad it is, we somehow think that we have to hold on, and just it's our human nature to try to keep things afloat. The best decision I made, the best realization I've ever come to, was that I didn't have a damn thing worth keeping afloat. I was finally ready and willing to just let it all go, and at that point, I didn't care. I didn't care if I was. I didn't care what I was going to give up because I didn't have anything worth keeping. Fortunately, I was able to maintain my home. I'm still living in the same place that I was living at that point. So I've been able to do that. But the difference is, today I dropped off a check for $3,500. So not only do I pay my $2,000 rent, but I get $1,000 truck payment. I pay for a garage that I'm renting. I pay my truck insurance. And I do that all in the first of the month, and I just go to the bank and take it out. I don't have to scramble. I don't have to worry about it. I don't have to do any math to see if I'm going to make it, because I've got way more than in the bank, and it's never, ever, ever been the case. an addiction for me to have anything in the bank, and it's beautiful. It doesn't even make a difference today, because I've been working my spiritual program. I've been applying these spiritual principles to my life day in and day out, and just challenging myself to be the very best version of me I possibly can, and then taking leaps of faith at every opportunity. Like I was very fortunate to not only understand that I had to let it all go, but that I needed to do things in the proper steps for a change. So before I did anything, I sat back and said, okay, I need help. I need to figure out what it is that's wrong with me, and I need to heal from these things. And lo and behold, it wasn't anywhere near as traumatic as I thought. I've been so incredibly grateful, because every day of recovery, even my worst days of recovery, have been so much better than the life that I was leading in addiction. It was just so taxing, so miserable. I was stuck amongst people I didn't want to be with, doing things I didn't want to do, taking on responsibilities that weren't mine because I had to, because they're the people that held the dollars at that point, and I needed to get to the next drug. Dealing with just scumbag drug dealers that were taking advantage of me because they knew I needed it to go to work. I couldn't stay home. It was just, you know what I mean? I put myself in the very worst of positions. And I'm not blaming any of them. I'm taking full accountability. But I allowed myself to be in those situations, right? By letting that all go, and then not rushing. And that's the thing, guys. Every time I've tried before, I've always tried to rush right out to get everything back and put things together to make it look like I wasn't hurting. This time I was hurting, and I admitted I was hurting. So I said, okay, I need help. I literally, step by step, I got into rehab. Then I got into medically assisted treatment. I got into my OBAC clinic. I got into my IOP through Riverside Recovery Group. I found my AA home group, and then I started my YouTube channel, and I just started working with my therapists, my doctors, my dermatologists, my dentists, my recovery advisor, my recovery coach, and I took the time, guys. I was in no hurry. I literally just did little odd jobs to make enough money to get by, and then I got help with I got hooked up with the raft back rent help. I got on food stamps. I did all the things I had to do instead of rushing right out and trying to put everything together. I said, no, let me garner the resources that are available and take the time that I needed to work through the issues that have been plaguing me for the last 40 years. And more often than not, it was just a matter of acknowledging them, admitting that they were what was controlling my life, admitting that I was making terrible decisions, and then focusing on, and again, in the early days, guys, I literally had to just stop and do the opposite of every instinct I had, and that served me incredibly well early on, until I was able to pick and choose, or really not pick and choose, but differentiate between what was a bad instinct and what was my new positive instinct. And literally, it was like that. Okay, is this an old behavior? Is this a new behavior? Because I made sure before I took any action that it was a positive behavior, so that I wouldn't slip and I wouldn't go backwards. And that allowed me to start feeling good about myself, allowed me to start building a little bit of confidence, right? And then by turning my will over to God and being so incredibly faithful to my higher power, whom I choose to call God, praying, guys, I was praying constantly, meditating constantly, and then taking introspective count of what thoughts were coming to my brain. And then every time something felt negative, I said, nope, I can't do it, because I know where that leads. And that's the difference, guys. By paying attention to what I did for a change, I stopped making the same mistakes. And it was very uncomfortable, and it was very scary, and I was very confused, and I had no idea what was going to come of it. I didn't know if I was right, and I was just doing the best I could with what I had and taking huge leaps of faith. And then one by one, these beautiful things started happening. I got accepted for it. Guys, I didn't get stimulus checks when they were handing people stimulus checks. Like, literally, that's how bad I was with the government. I couldn't get anything. Now, all of a sudden, I'm getting, grants and rent help and food stamps and insurance. And one by one, things started going in my favor. And I'm like, wow, this is totally new. And I know that seems very basic, people. But guys, you gotta understand. During COVID, I could not get a stimulus check. And I think it's because my wife tried claiming me on her taxes. So she got them. And of course, that was her money, not mine. So I was working for cash, and I was getting high, and I would have pissed away anyway. But anyway, my point being, when I started doing good things, when I took the time out to heal, to start feeling good about myself, right? Like, one thing I had a huge problem with was the fact that I couldn't look in the mirror. I was skinny, so I started going to the gym. started getting a little bit stronger. I started eating better, eating healthier, right? And so I started getting a little healthier. I had that big growth in my face. Matter of fact, I go back this week and have it touched up. But so I started taking care of the things that had been plaguing me and bothering me about myself for years. And one by one, every time I ticked the box completed, I felt a little bit better about myself. And then I looked around and said, okay, what can I do next? I have momentum going. Let me keep doing this, right? And I let everybody know. Like when I first got out of rehab, guys, my boss wanted me to back the next day. And I'm like, nope. I'm taking the first 4 days off to go get all my appointments, get all my stuff set up. And he's like, oh, you're not stipulated to anything. You do this on your own. No, but I signed up for a lot of stuff. I told him straight up. I'm like, if you don't want to deal with it, then no problem. I'm not really ready to come back to work anyway. But no, I need you. I came back and guys, 2 hours after I got there, he's at the drug dealer's house, and I'm like, I had all this bad feeling, like all this anxiety about going back to work for him, and in the back of my head, I knew it wasn't going to work, but I just hadn't come up with a solution for it yet. But I continued to dwell on that, saying, I know I can't do this. I went back, and that sealed the fate right there. When he pulled up in front of that drug dealer's house that day, I said, I knew it. I said, that's it. And I kind of balked at it because I felt bad, and I'm like, what do I feel bad about? I've given this guy so much more than he's ever given me, and this is my life, not his. And when he did something else about a week later that was really taking advantage of me, I gave my notice on the spot. While I had anger and while I had, it was the energy built up, I'm like, hey, listen. And I did it in a kind way. I told him I was taking the time off to go back to school and do some research and stuff. But I'm like, I need a leave of absence. I'm giving you my 2-week notice. And I stayed the 2 weeks, but I did. I quit my job. And he was flabbergasted by that. And I told him, I said, this isn't punishment for you. This is because I need to focus on me. And this is just something I can't do right now. Well, what are you going to do for money? I don't know. I'll figure it out. So I reached out and I let my landlord, who was letting me borrow the truck at that point, I let him know what I was doing. And he's like, good for you, keep me. And then that's when he sold me the truck, and I got caught up with my rent, and he started feeding me work, and I was just doing enough work, and then in the beginning, just taking care of my appointments, right? And then when I realized that he had to pay through company checks, I'm like, well, it's a perfect opportunity. I've been wanting to reopen a company for years, so I took another leap of faith, and I opened my business. And in the early days, guys, the beauty of it was I'm so used to spending all my money on drugs, I know how to live cheap. So I wasn't working a lot, but suddenly I could literally make my paycheck in a few hours. I didn't have a lot of work, but it was enough to sustain and even start to save a little bit. But because I was being faithful, I was being grateful for what I had, not pissing and moaning that I don't have enough, I'm scared, and this isn't good. No, everything was great because it was better than where I was. I was moving in the right direction. So I maintained an attitude of gratitude and literally just woke up every day, pray, meditate, and said, okay, what do I have in front of me? I'm going to do everything to the best of my ability. I'm going to stand out in every situation for being kind, for being positive, for being hard working, for being dedicated, for being faithful, and being reliable. And this is the things that I did. And lo and behold, boom, 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 things just started to pick up. And now I've gained all this momentum, and things are going swimmingly well. But it's because my life is guided by my higher power. It's because I'm sober. It's because I'm working these spiritual principles, and I'm working a really, really strong recovery program. All the things I was never willing to do before, and that I wondered why I would fail miserably, because I always thought I was exempt from having to do the things that everybody else did to succeed. Finally, I understood that I'm not different than anybody else. I'm not exempt from anything if I don't apply myself and I don't do everything right. And here's the thing, I always had the excuse, well, because of my record, because of this, because of that, blah, 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 blah. No. When I did things through my higher power to the best of my ability, being upfront and honest about everything I needed was, everything I needed fell into my lap. What used to be barriers became the place that I'm working from. And people started saying, instead of saying, well, this kid's a degenerate, no, I said, look what this kid's been through and look what he's doing now. And all those positions of weakness that I used to think precluded me from being able to succeed and live a positive, proper, respectful life, suddenly were wiped away. They were no longer barriers, but they were just the obstacles that I've now overcome that show that I can lead by example and that anything is possible. And they've become the place of strength that I'm working from, guys. It is literally miraculous. That's why I tell you constantly. I've watched the miracles. manifest in my day-to-day life. And it started with how I felt about myself. It started with me thinking that I was worth it, understanding that I had value not just by the work that I was doing, but by being myself, by being willing to share my story, to help another addict, by going out and holding a door for somebody, fixing a car broken down, helping somebody get in, and just whatever service I could do. And that's what I've done. I didn't stop and say anything was beneath me or anything was below me. I've just taken every opportunity to do things the best that I could. I've walked away from anything that didn't serve me, and that's the other thing. I had to also understand that I had value, and I had to start seeing the value in myself and knowing what situations weren't serving my highest good. And if they weren't serving my highest good and they weren't, for somebody else's positive highest good, I let them go. And I had to have the intestinal fortitude, the guts to say no, and understand that no was a complete sentence, and I've had to do so. And I haven't done everything perfectly, guys. I've made mistakes, I've stepped backwards, but none of them have been the tragic, lose everything, step backwards that I've always experienced throughout my life. Guys, today it's shocking how good things are. And again, not balling by any means, but I have stability that I've never had in my life. I've got opportunities that I've never had in my life. I'm closing chapters that I have not been able to close for 30 years, and walking away and doing things in positive light. But it's because I'm doing things to the best of my ability. I have situations come up that used to knock me so far backwards because I didn't have all the proper foundation built. I didn't have bank accounts, I didn't have insurance, I didn't have this, that, or the other. And when something would happen, I didn't have anything to fall back on. I'd lose everything. Today, I have all those things. So when something comes up, it's just part of day-to-day life, and I'm able to move past it without it taking all my energy, all my resources. And that's the difference, guys. That's why we do everything clean. It's called living clean. I love living clean. I love living honest. I love having the guts to just be who I am. And I'm finding out who I really am, and I'm a much better person than I had led myself to believe for a long time. Early on, I knew I was exceptional in a lot of ways, and I lost that because I was doing so many terrible things, and I blamed every bit of it on my history. Well, because I did this, but then I just continued to make those same mistakes over and over and over again, and never moved past them. Because we can get over anything if we stop doing those things. If we change our patterns, our thinking patterns, our action patterns, our behaviors, our surroundings, people, places, and things, guys. If you're stuck in addiction, you've got to change the people, places, and things, including yourself. And if you do so, you can live a life that you choose. And you just have to be willing to do the work to do it. You're working just as hard to ruin your life as you will to build your life. Why not be on the positive side, guys? Let go of the need for instant gratification and have a little faith that the sun's going to come up tomorrow and that it's worth putting some effort towards that. Guys, that's the lessons today. Thank you so much for being here. Always remember, God loves you. I love you. Thank you so much. We'll see you in the next one.